I'm standing on the International Space Station's revolving deck as I write this to no one in particular. Every 30 seconds, it rotates around so you can see the Earth as it hangs in space. I was entranced by the calm little ball of water and dirt from the first time I saw it. It's so easy to forget how chaotic it is down there. From the cold and silent reaches of space, you forget that the Earth is full of honking horns and screaming people. It's so easy to forget that terror exists in places other than Earth. I was honored, thrilled even, when they told me I had been selected to reside on the International Space Station. I'd been dreaming of space since I was a little kid. Like many kids my age, I had decided that I wanted to be an astronaut. Unlike many kids my age, though, I meant it. Every class, every grade, every extracurricular, and every internship had been tailored to get me to this point in my life. Every move I had ever made had brought me to this point, standing on the rotating viewing platform so I can watch the Earth circle around. At least, I could until about 8 hours ago. I awoke at 6 a.m., International Space Station time, as I do every day. I took my morning shower, made my first cup of coffee of the day, and walked into my kitchenette to make my breakfast. Then I took my breakfast to the rotating platform so I could eat it as I watched the Earth roll lazily by. But when I came to the platform that morning, I was in for a surprise. As I glanced out of the thick glass window, I was greeted with nothing. I could see a few satellites drifting lazily through the inky vortex. I could see the usual collection of debris just waiting to burn up in Earth's atmosphere. I could see the stars as they twinkled in the darkness of space. I could see the other planets as they winked further from the station. What I could not see was Earth. I can still see my broken coffee cup as it spreads its liquid across the floor. My overturned bowl of oatmeal is sitting near it. I'm standing not 10 feet away from the place I stood when I discovered there was no Earth. As I sit writing, I can hear the sounds of chaos that have invaded my once peaceful haven. The crew is going mad, running rampant with panic. They now know what it must feel like to be a newborn who's been clipped from his umbilicus. Hal laughed when I told him what I had seen. Hal is the communications officer for the station, and he thought I was joking with him. When it became clear that I wasn't joking, he tried to hail the command center in California, just to put my mind at ease. They would pick up, and I would see that the whole thing was just a big misunderstanding. When they didn't answer, he seemed unsure, but not alarmed. "That's just interference. I'll try the center in Florida," he said with a little laugh. No answer. He tried to hail system control in 5 different countries. No answer. We attempted to contact anyone within the sound of our voice, and also received no answer. Only then did he come to the observation deck with me and verify that there was no Earth. Someone's crying. I can hear them sobbing from the crew quarters as I sit and stare into the void. There were a lot of people mourning when the Earth disappeared. When I left my room and walked out here, I could see the signs of suicide as well. Ravita, one of our science team members, was lying on her bed as I walked by. The door was open, and she looked so peaceful as she lay there. Still, I knew she must be dead. A line of foam slid from the corner of her mouth, and her chest moved not at all. Others had hung themselves. You could see them hanging like strange wind chimes from the vents in their rooms. There were no firearms on the station, but I could hear the research lab table saw running full blast, and I could guess what sort of business it was doing. Others were using this as an excuse for bad behavior. The mess hall was full of people, eating the food stores and drinking what little alcohol we had available on the station. I was sure a certain amount of rape and murder were going on as well. As I stood there stargazing, though, it hardly seemed to matter. Very little matters now. We are adrift, our umbilicus cut, and we're all living on borrowed time. The air would cycle through the air handlers indefinitely. That was a given. But without food and water, we would die. Our food comes on a shuttle from Earth once a month. We were not equipped to grow our own food. No seeds, very little soil on board. Once our food is gone, we will starve. At the rate we were eating the food in the mess hall, we'd be lucky to have food for the week. I put a hand against the glass, momentarily dizzy. I see the red handprint left behind and know I have to finish writing this quickly. They've left me alone for now, but if the puddle of blood oozing into my chair is any indication, I don't have very long. Hal and I took our findings to the head researcher. Vaughn looked over the numbers, checked the data, and then came with us to the observation deck to see for himself. By this point, several of the researchers and the other station staff had gathered to look out into space, hoping to find that familiar blue orb we all loved so much. When they saw him, they all came to Vlan for answers. Vlan was stoic in the face of their fear, answering their questions evenly and putting their minds at ease. I'd known Vlan for years, an Israeli native drifting towards old age, and I had never seen him lose his cool. He didn't start now. I don't know what has happened, but I think what is important is that we not panic. We were hand-picked for this mission, and we must act like we deserve to be here. Go about your duties as you would any other day. When news surfaces, I will let everyone know. He called a meeting with Boggs, head of security, Mortimer, director of operations, Charlie, Hal, and myself. Charlie was my boss, the head researcher under Vlan, and very, very British. I believe the most important thing here is to maintain order. We have around 100 people on board, men and women, and if anarchy breaks out, then we may never over this. Over this? Mortimer asked skeptically. Pull your head out of your ass, Charles. The Earth is gone. We don't know that, Charles stated, wiping his bald head with a handkerchief. I've got eyes, same as you, and they tell me the Earth is not where it's supposed to be. Now, either we've drifted, or we aren't where we're supposed to be, or... Oh, don't pretend you know a damn thing about what's going on here, Charles shot back hotly. We pay you and your wrench jockeys to fix the air handlers, keep the pneumatic doors running, and maintain the systems on the station. You're no astronomer, Mortimer, not by a long shot. Mortimer turned red as he stepped closer to the blustery Englishman. Mortimer was no egghead, that was for certain, but he had served in 2 wars and was the most exceptional nuclear submarine tech the program could have laid hands on. He was also a bristling mass of service tattoos and sculpted muscle. I had seen him working out in the gym, giving the heavy bag a run for its money daily. Charles was about to learn what that bag knew for a certainty. Just because I didn't go to some fancy university doesn't mean I'm country dumb, you little insect. Gentlemen, please, Vlan shouted, bringing the 2 back to their senses. We have a problem, and your fighting is not helping. We have not drifted. Our telemetry tells us that we are occupying the same position in space that we've been holding since the beginning. We have not moved, unless our telemetry is wrong. It's not, Charles said smugly. Then something has happened to the Earth. It's our job to keep the peace, Mortimer. Tell your people to go about their tasks as they would. Boggs, tell your security staff to maintain order and not get too excited. I don't want public hangings, but I do want to see malcontents going to the brig. Charles, keep your people on task and keep their minds occupied. Maybe you could push forward our agricultural programs for the time being. Food may become a priority. Dismissed. He may have dismissed them, but their animosity remained. For the next few hours, tensions slowly built between the science team and the maintenance team. Mortimer could be seen talking to his crew, casting dark looks at anyone from the science team that got too close. The talk was loud and angry, and many of Boggs' security crew would also be seen in these discussions. Boggs seemed to share Mortimer's outlook on the current situation. The 2 were soldiers, after all, and saw us as little more than egghead civilians who thought too much of themselves. Charles was just as bad. He sealed off the science lab and put us to work on greenhouse projects. He stormed around like a rat in a cage, snapping at people for no reason, and confiding to his group of favorites about the stupid roughnecks who thought they were better than us. He kept looking towards the door fervently, and I knew he was thinking the same thing I was. Boggs had an override key to all the doors on the station, and if those roughnecks decided that they wanted into the lab, there wasn't a goddamn thing we could do about it. At 10:30, Vlan called Charles. The 2 had a very heated discussion, as quietly as possible, of course, but it was evident that something was going on. Charles turned pale towards the end, and his eyes kept slipping back to the door. He was afraid of something out there, more fearful than I'd ever seen him. When the phone suddenly went dead, he put it in the cradle with all the reverence of a casket going into the ground. They made their move around noon. We had heard some dissident noises from outside, but Charles wouldn't let us leave. He told us to keep working and never mind what we heard. The missing members were not commented on. They had never shown up this morning, but we all just kept doing our best. As the noises came closer, I saw many of the scientists looking anxiously at the door. We all glanced over when it opened, and our fear was realized. In walked 8 members of Boggs' security detail, followed by Mortimer and 8 of his maintenance crew. As I mentioned, there were no guns on the station, but they all had batons or wrenches or knives from the kitchen tucked into their belts. They blocked the door as they fanned out, and it was apparent what they intended to do. Charles was livid. "What are you about? We're performing serious work in here, so if you could just..." "By order of Overseer Boggs, we are taking the science team into custody," Mortimer announced, a huge grin spreading across his face. "Overseer? Vlan will have something to say about this. When I tell him what you've done, he'll..." But as he approached Mortimer, the big man swung a monkey wrench he'd had in his hand and scattered Charles's teeth and blood across the lab. Charles fell like a sack of oats, and pandemonium ensued. We all broke, making for the door and hitting the wall of guards. I don't remember how I got away. All I remember was a brilliant flash of pain in my side, and someone bumped me hard. Suddenly I was in the hall, running for Vlan's quarters. The corridor rang with screams and noise. People were running as other science teams were being rounded up by security staff. As I ran, dodging groups of security staff as they chased others, I was aware again of the pain in my abdomen. That's when I looked down and saw the handle sticking out of my side. The blade it was attached to was long and sharp, a kitchen knife used for boning fish. When I pulled it out, it was red with my blood, and the blood wasted little time in dribbling out of the new hole. I shrugged out of my lab coat and tried to tie it off like a tourniquet, but it did little more than give the blood something new to stain. I felt a little dizzy. I wanted to sit down, but I knew this was the wrong time to do it. I kept going, hoping Vlan would bring peace to the station, but I already feared what I would find when I got to his office. I didn't even have to go in to see what they'd done to him. He was slumped over his desk in a pool of his own blood. Someone, probably Boggs, had cut his throat for him and left him where he lay. I turned to go, and at that minute, I think I was already planning on coming here to die. I dropped the knife on the floor and walked unnoticed through the hall. I saw bodies, I heard the screams, but I was ambivalent to them, as I was to the vacuum outside. I couldn't help them, and they couldn't save me, so what was the point of belaying the inevitable? My eyesight is getting foggy now. I think I came here hoping to see Earth blink back into existence before I die. I don't know if I really was or not, but it would make me feel better to know that there still is an Earth out there. As chaotic as those billions of humans are, I don't think I want the few of us still alive here to be what my species will be judged by. They've proven that humanity, even the best of humanity, will revert back to apes at a moment's notice. Survival of the fittest, even in space, is not a hallmark I want on display, but it seems to be what this station's history will be left with. I'm going to sleep now. My fingers are numb. The rest seems like a good idea. If this is truly my final message, then take some solace in knowing that I died doing what I loved. I died among the stars, hoping for hope for the Earth and its people. Good evening, everyone. It's me, Dr. Plague. Thank you so much for joining me for tonight's story. Let's go ahead and thank our sponsors before we leave for the night. Thanks to Leslie Lou Riddle for being our Spooky Skeleton tier contributor, and thanks to Glenn Jenkins for being our Ghost Rider tier contributor. Thanks, guys. We couldn't do it without you. If you too would like to support the show, come on down to Patreon. We have several tiers that might interest you, and for just $5 a month, you too can be one of our Spooky Skeleton tier contributors and have your name read out at the end of every TikTok and every YouTube video that I make. $5 contributors also get to choose a story for my Monday stories, so come on ahead in early and get your story on. For these Wednesday stories, if you'd like to read along with us, we have books up on Amazon. We're currently almost a third of the way through Dark Vortex, so come on down and get your own copy. You can read along with us. It'll be like a little book club. I've got links to both of those in the description, both Amazon and Patreon, so whatever you're in the mood for, come have a look. And as always, I hope we'll see you next time for a new story. Dr. Plague, signing off. Have a wonderful evening.